Hi, this is Dana Unruh, EDL 851, the final case study. A teacher turns bad, stress at home causes problems at school. Summary of the situation. Mrs. Horton is a first grade teacher who, at the end of her year, has started showing outside stressors. Her husband has left her. She's now raising her two teenage boys by herself. This has caused a shift in her professional demeanor. She is becoming verbally abusive with her students. She is confrontational with her staff. She is avoiding parent-teacher meetings, as well as coming late to work. She is not doing her normal preparation time outside of regular class hours. And Principal Wilson is her principal. She is had 3 full years as principal in this district. She's getting ready to start her fourth. Principal Wilson notices the change in her demeanor and behavior, decides to see if the summer break will help things, and tries to brush it under the rug. After summer break, things have not gotten better. They've actually escalated. And now we have parents complaining, making phone calls to board members as well as the superintendent. And then she decides, as the principal, she's going to have a conversation, only to find out that there is a parent in her office waiting for her to have the same conversation. Mr. Stafford is the father of Julie, one of the children in her class, and is there to request that Julie be moved out of her room as she is showing physical manifestations of the stress from that verbal abuse she's receiving on a daily basis in Mrs. Horton's classroom. She decides to have this conference with the parent as well as the teacher, schedules it for the next morning, begins the meeting, and Mr. Stafford expresses his concern with Mrs. Horton as well as the principal, and Mrs. Horton cuts him off and begins yelling at him, calling him a liar, saying the things you're saying isn't true, and that she wouldn't act that way in class. Principal Wilson thanks him for coming, escorts him to the door, and tells him that she will look into this matter further and let him know how the situation is evolving. What we need to know about Principal Wilson. She's a 13-year teacher. She's got 13 years of teaching experience. She's went to school for 4 years at night to get her certification as a principal. She's worked 8 solid years with this current staff, and she has been 3 full years as principal. When she began, parents were happy, attendance was good, test scores were above average. She took a professor's recommendation and didn't want to rock the boat during her first year, and didn't do so in the first couple years actually, and only this year did she decide to institute a new reading program. What do we need to know? We need to know what evaluation system that the school uses. Is it everybody gets evaluated every year? Is it only new teachers get evaluated on a yearly basis? Veterans get every 3 to 5. We really need to understand what's going on with that. Principal Wilson has expressed that she is doing frequent walkthroughs and hasn't noticed this behavior. I'd like to know how frequent these walkthroughs are and how she has not noticed this behavior if it is as severe as it is being accused. I'd like to know the superintendent's opinion if the situation has escalated to the point where he's had to give a phone call to the principal and things had not been done. I am sure he is not happy. I'd also like to know the district policy on this situation. Is there a policy on teachers arriving late to work? Is there a policy on effectiveness falling? Is there a policy on verbal abuse in the classroom? Is there a policy on how or the steps we need to take to put her on some form of an improvement plan? The problems that are posed to Principal Horton. Mrs. Horton is not supportive of the curricular changes. She is confrontational with her colleagues as well as her administration. She is showing up late to work. Her effectiveness in her classroom is decreasing, and we're receiving complaints about her behavior in the classroom. What do we know about Mrs. Horton, the teacher? She's teaching first grade. She used to be a Teacher of the Year candidate. She's under a lot of stress at home. She's becoming confrontational with her staff. Her work habits have changed. Parents are complaining. Superintendent and board members have been receiving phone calls. So since it's escalated to that level, it is now not just a building issue, it is a district matter. So the fact that Principal Wilson has ignored it to this point has turned it from a small issue to a very large issue. What we need to know, first of all, is the makeup of her classroom. Is she under abnormal stress because of the makeup of her class? Does she have high needs students? Does she have ESL students? Does she have behavioral issue students? What is going on with this class? Is this part of the stress? Is there an aide in the room, or can we possibly get an aide in this room? Well, how many years has she been in the first grade? Is this no longer the grade she needs to teach? Does she not understand first graders? Did she overestimate it, underestimate it? There's a lot of things we can take into account on that one. Also with that, how many years has she been teaching? Is she burnout? Is it time for her to transition into something less classroom related and still in the teaching field? Also, I'd like to see her past evaluations and like to know how frequently she had been evaled. Problems surrounding Mrs. Horton. She is unable at the current time to separate her work and home life. Her classroom behavior is absolutely unacceptable. She is receiving complaints from parents. Her students' safety and well-being is no longer her number one priority. She is refusing parent meetings, and she yelled at a parent during a conference. First thing I would do is confidentially gather information for the next meeting with Mrs. Horton. I'd look at her personnel file. I need to look at her evaluations, complaints, trainings, contracts from the past, anything that can give me a sense of where she's coming from to see if this is an isolated incident or if this is, an occurrence that is just not been taken care of in the past, and this is a reoccurring behavior. I'd like to interview teachers, staff, and parents who have complained about Mrs. Horton in this matter to see again if these complaints are founded or if it is just an isolated incident where a child is making too much of something small that has happened. I'd like to brainstorm internally to see what structures we have that could serve as support for Mrs. Horton. And I'd also like to make sure that we use district approved documentation methods to make sure that everything is kept confidential and can be used in the future if necessary. I'll schedule a conference with Mrs. Horton, and during that conference, the first thing I'm going to do is allow her to tell her side of the story. I'm going to take notes and add that to the current documentation, and I want to make sure she understands that I am there for her and I am openly listening. I want to articulate the severity and the urgency of this matter with her, and I also want to overview the documentation that I have compiled without breaking confidentiality of any parties that have been interviewed to make sure she understands that these accusations are in fact founded. I want to relay to her that I am here for support, but I do not support her current behavior that she's exhibiting. I would also like to discuss possible support solutions within the district as well as outside of our building. I would like to work with her to set up possible solutions to this matter. So I'd like to set goals with her as well as timelines. I want to review my plan of action with her as well as schedule follow-up meeting with her in no more than 1 calendar week. The next thing I would do would be to review our plan of action. I would review those or set some goals, really hard goals with her, as well as a time frame we'd be looking at. I would stress to her that she will be having daily walkthroughs as well as a formal eval within 1 calendar week, and we will have that scheduled during this meeting. I would, if possible, provide an aide to put in her classroom immediately to help relieve some of those stresses and extra work until we can get this matter more in hand, as well as assign a mentor with her that has things in common. Maybe we have a teacher who has gone through a divorce. Maybe we have a single parent in the building. Anything like that that she can have something in common with, and maybe somebody that can help relieve some of the stress so she doesn't feel so alone. Also, after we've done that formal eval, I want to offer the professional developments and shadowing opportunities that may help to increase her effectiveness in the classroom. Also, I want to talk with her about the possibilities of how we are going to notify parents about how this situation is being handled. The best case scenario for this is that she will take professional and personal accountability for her actions. She will take the help offered inside and out of the building, and her teaching demeanor will in fact improve. She will rebuild those relationships with students, parents, and staff, and overall student achievement and the welfare of those students will improve dramatically. Sorry, I have an itch in my eyeball. Worst case scenario, she does not take personal or professional accountability for her actions. She will not take the help offered, and her demeanor will worsen. She will further damage those relationships with students, parents, and staff. Her overall student achievement and welfare will continue to fall. She will see our efforts to help her as a personal attack, and in the event of this happening, disciplinary actions will take place, something such as maybe even a leave of absence. My thinking, Mr. Stafford's concerns for his daughter are absolutely founded, and Mrs. Horton's behaviors are unacceptable. In my opinion, Principal Wilson waited too long to address the situation that she saw escalating, and I can't imagine that the superintendent is happy with her. My feelings on this, I feel sympathy for Mr. Horton's situation or Mrs. Horton's situation outside of school. Raising two kids on your own cannot be an easy thing to do. I have empathy for Mr. Stafford, who wouldn't want to protect their child. I'm frustrated with Mrs. Horton's behavior inside of the classroom. I'm sympathetic for the students. I'm shocked that Principal Wilson didn't use better time management in this evolving situation. But I am pleased with the fact that she used such a professional manner when she was dealing with that parent meeting. I value the student's safety first and foremost. Fairness and for all involved has to be one of our key factors that we value. We want to make sure that we value the parent's opinion. We need to make sure student learning is at the top of our list, as well as the the school climate and culture, so our teachers and staff can have a safe and supportive environment to work in. And last but certainly not least, we have to value our superintendent and school board for allowing us to do our jobs and not micromanage. Unresolved issues. Possible unresolved issues here would be, is Miss Horton really going to change? Will Principal Wilson, in fact, move Julie to another classroom? How will this parent communication happen? Will the superintendent talk to Principal Wilson about how she dealt with this situation? And how will Principal Wilson deal with the situation while she keeps budgetary as well as staff constraints in mind? Our standard 2 that we need to reflect on states, an educational leader promotes the academic success and personal well-being for every student by enhancing instructional capacity. The first thing in this situation I would do would be to resolve the issues. We need to make sure we support our staff. We have conversations, not accusations, with our staff. We need to actively listen and be open-minded, and we need to be proactive, not reactive. For promoting success and well-being, we need to make sure we create a safe and inclusive environment. We promote fairness and equality. We use sound curriculums. We employ and retain quality staff and teachers, and we create open lines of communication with all stakeholders. Enhancing instructional capacity tells me that we need to hold our staff to high expectations. We need to support that staff with materials and professional developments on a case-by-case basis, and we need to use evaluations as growth tools, not gotchas. And we need to create a fair, positive, and accepting school culture in which all students can flourish and grow. My conclusion, this case study proves to me that we need to be on top of things in our building as principals. Timely action could have stopped this matter from getting to a boiling point. Taking time to get to know your staff is imperative. Always listen to our parents. Never dismiss any accusation without further investigation, and always be a champion, not just for your students, but also for your staff.